It's part 3 of the Parthia campaign Abridged in Rome Total War Remastered, where last time we outshot the Armenians and took all of their stuff. We then got invaded by the Seleucid Empire. However, we annoyingly horse-archered them to death and got rid of their invasion force. Now we're ready to invade them, but at the same time we're getting invaded by Scythia, so right up in the corner of the map now. We need to do this settlement defense with our big pile of peasants facing down 2 horse archers and some axemen. Well, this is a chance for us to try out some antics, of course. We've got our general's bodyguard, and before the enemy arrive we're going to send him outside, essentially to see what the enemy will do in response to this. In the past and in some Total War games, doing this will cause all kinds of shenanigans, but right here, the enemy's response is pretty good. They immediately drop the ram and run towards my cav, driving me back inside the town, difficult because of pathfinding issues. Once the gates are closed though, they go back to the ram. What might have happened there was they would forget about the ram and we'd automatically win. I feel like I've seen that happen a few times. Well, they are better than that, it seems. I then went out a second time. This time around, they sent everything towards my cav. They've escalated their response, and again, I'm going to be forced back inside the town. This is pretty good. They've effectively stopped me from doing some shenanigans. I feel like usually that doesn't happen. I don't think the remaster has changed the AI in any way. But I do think the older games actually did have quite good AI from my vague memory from literally like 20 years ago. But yes, it seems to be happening here. The pathfinding though, definitely worse than in newer games. It's very difficult to get our men through the gate. They form up in a big single file line, including in the enemy formation. Not the best. We eventually have to let the enemy in, and now my plan strikes. The horse archers, once inside the town, won't really be able to skirmish away from us and we can lock them down into melee. Or can we? Turns out these peasants are worse than I thought. They only last, well, literally 2 seconds in melee, and then they are going to rout through the enemy and all die, so we've immediately lost one of our 4 units. Not the best start. The guys standing on the capture point though will have a better time because they always fight to the death if they're in the square, allowing what meager stats they have to have some impact on the enemy. Those horse archers are going to have bad melee stats as well, of course, so it's not the worst matchup. And very early on we take out their commander. Handy. Now I'm going to try and use my general's bodyguards to take out the other horse archer unit. Again, taking advantage of the fact it's going to be hard for them to skirmish away from us in the town. But that is true because the pathfinding is a bit weird. But it affects me as well, so it's also hard for me to move towards them, just as it's hard for them to move away. So after a lot of jank, we eventually connect and get some sort of melee going. And our guys will just be better than theirs, so there's not too much to worry about there. What we do need to worry about is all of the peasants dying. We're rapidly being wiped out over here, but we can't rout and we're gradually grinding those enemy troops down as they kill us. Handily, their axemen are kind of behind the horse archers and aren't really engaging. They could easily kill all of us, but most of them aren't doing anything right now. We've taken out the other horse archer unit and now my cav come in to attack those axes from behind. This is way more effective than I expected. They just rout instantly, and now we'll kill them on the way out. That's probably the decisive moment in this battle. With the axemen out of the way, things will be much easier. We've got more peasant on horse archer action, but we're going to have the same problem as before, where after the fight starts, it just ends due to low morale. But yes, we've won now effectively. We've got basically nothing left on the capture point, but those axemen are going to get killed by my cav as they try to leave. Same deal for my peasants being killed by the enemy cav. Those guys lasted a bit longer than the first unit, facing a weaker enemy I suppose, but it made no difference really. They're very bad, and the thing about peasants is, their upkeep is about 100 gold per turn. Horse archers only have an upkeep of 110. So it's not like they're that much cheaper to keep than horse archers. They're very bad in comparison for what you pay for, I suppose. I think they're just for public order because they have a large unit size. Well, I'm actually going to recruit some real units after winning that battle, in case these Scythians come back. I need to make the generic barracks building there so we can grab some eastern spears or something, a generic unit handy for guarding streets. But that's in the past now. It's time to focus on what I was really interested in doing. We need to attack the Salukids, and we're ready to do it here at Hatra right now. So we move in with our blob of horse archers and 1 unit of support slingers. I also had a spy inside the walls here. there's a chance that would allow me to attack this turn. But I wasn't lucky enough, I suppose, so we'll start making a ram instead and hope nothing shows up to disrupt all this. We've also got our other army, our main army really, on the right hand side. They're going to link up with a bunch of infantry and be a more balanced, substantial force to go after the enemy's capital at Seleucia. Just going to spam rams here and go in the normal way, nothing special going on. Now we just wait for a turn and see what happens. Well, nothing happens, so that means it's time for us to attack these places. Here's the Hatra Assault. The gates were actually opened by the spy also this turn, so we've got our ram, but we don't need it, we're just going to charge on in. The enemy just have loads of hoplites, pretty good actually for defending narrow streets, but of course we have horse archers, so all we need to do is not be in melee with the enemy, and we should be okay, although that's going to be easier said than done with fun inner city pathfinding to deal with. Here I am though, actually killing some enemies despite them not being in my range and without us having to go into the town, so that's all handy. I think this range thing, well, I've got two theories about why horse archers seem to be able to shoot further than their range says. The first theory is that their range markers project from the center of the unit, I guess. They don't come out of the front of the unit, so the guys at the front can shoot further than it says. Whereas I think foot units, for them it does come out of the front of the unit. Or it could be because this game does have extra range for being above the enemy. And if you think about it, a horse archer is shooting from above the enemy because they're sitting on a horse, so maybe their 1 meter of height translates to extra range not shown by the range markers. Well, I don't know. Basically, horse archers are a bit better than they look. Here's an example of the range marker coming out of the front of the slinger unit. I guess because horse archers can shoot backwards, that's why it has to measure it from the middle or something, I don't know. These slingers actually prove to be useless because they can't arc their shots over the wall, so we can't do some nice exploits. I remember when I was a wee lad playing this game, just sitting outside walls and shooting guys inside the town. An exploit as old as time itself, and we're going to be taking full advantage of it in this battle. Right here our slingers are ready to go. Takes them a while, they have to really think about it. But eventually we can shoot through the open gate and inflict some damage on those spears. And ideally, when they start taking hits, the AI might try to move them somewhere, they'll turn around and not have their shielded side facing us, something like that, and we'll get a few more extra kills. The slingers though aren't going to be very good. Slingers just can't be trusted in this game. I'm not quite sure why in later life I think that slingers are the best kind of unit. In the beginning it seems they were the worst kind of unit. Well, at least we have our horse archers and here we are doing the exploits. We can just maneuver about a bit. A few of the enemy units will come out to the outside of the town. Now we can absolutely annihilate them. And it works very well against hoplite units because they move so slowly and because they're usually weak against rear attacks. So we can just rain arrows on them from behind. They just walk around looking pretty chill. Here's us shooting way beyond what our range markers are saying we can do to hit that unit in the back over there. They are chasing down those slingers, so that's handy. We can aggro them with the slingers and keep the horse archers out of danger. Here's us finishing off the unit we drew out earlier. They don't rout until they're very nearly dead. This is both because the game tends to balance morale to be high, so stuff just doesn't rout. It also, though, is to do with the fact that some of the morale penalties can only be applied to units that are in melees. So running into a unit that's nearly dead might rout it instantly, but if you just kill them with ranged attacks, you have to really wipe them out to get them to go. At least I think that's how it works. I've got a vague memory of it being like that in Medieval 2. I expect it's the same here. But anyway, I'm fine with standing around and waiting for the enemy to die because it's pretty safe. Although we do occasionally have mishaps, like right here, the battle music finally starts playing so you know something bad has happened. Some of our guys have made melee contact with the enemy as we try to adjust and fit into all these gaps to shoot at the guys who are just stubbornly standing on the capture point. It's working out, but we do have some pathing issues like right here. You might have seen me just a second ago order this unit to go and stand in the square on the left of the screen. But instead they decided to run through the enemy and go somewhere else. I don't know what they're up to. They took a bunch of casualties. They even lost a whole bunch of morale and almost routed, taking friendly fire too. Nasty stuff. So that's what we need to pay attention to. In this case, we get out of there, and go back to business, as this unit is just too slow to do anything else. They're going to get cut down. Similar deal over here. These hoplites edging towards us. Can only hope to absorb all of our ammo before they die. I'm sure a real hoplite unit might be able to do it, but the militia with their low armor probably can't. Towards the end we get a visit from the enemy captain who comes over to talk to our horse archers. Guessing this doesn't trigger skirmishing, or maybe it's just not working. Might even have turned it off because it's a bit annoying in the city streets. Well, whatever the case, he tries to kill one of our guys, then he has a change of heart and in the Olympian tradition runs away with his flaming torch. Well, that didn't help very much. We're going to take the central point pretty soon and take the town pretty soon. Here's the aftermath. We didn't really lose anything. We've got the town, and that's that. Now all we need to do is blow up their shrine to the wrong god, build a shrine to the right god to help public order be good, and then we'll just sit here because I'm a bit worried about moving out in this area in case that big stack comes back. I'm kind of just being cheeky with this one. We're going to sit in Hatra and see what happens for a bit. The main push I want to make is with the other bigger army, and first of course, they need to take the enemy's capital, which we can do right now. Pretty much the same deal as the last battle, where I'll want to use my horse archers to exploit the enemy down as much as possible, but this time they do have some peltasts which can shoot back, and some generals which are harder to kill, so probably need to be a tiny bit more careful than in the last battle. I was inspecting the guys closely to try and work out what's going on with the ranged stuff. Here, well, I don't know what's happening. One unit is firing, the rest aren't. I thought maybe like the front ranks of all the units would fire or something because they're closer. Well, that data didn't really help. Looks like they started firing after the enemy started moving further away. That doesn't really help either. Nobody knows what's going on, but we have killed some enemy peltasts. We need to actually wait to open the gates in this battle, so we can't go into the town yet. But we don't need to, because a few enemies have kindly come and stood near the gates. Here's some javcav. Throw a few javs over, these militia hoplites will have a bad time. At least the AI does have the sense to try and move them away when you do this. It's just that hoplites move so slowly that we're going to be able to use up all of our ammo before they're out of range. Once we opened one of the gates, they sent a unit of pike phalanx to try and guard it. That's going to be a bad decision because all of our archers will just absolutely hammer them and eventually kill them, allowing us into the town. Once inside, I sent my cataphracts to deal with these peltasts here. They almost walked past them, more funny pathfinding. Luckily at the last second they turned on in and took them out. That's all good. Now we just need to continue through and grind the enemy down with as few melee contacts made as possible. We want our archers to use up all their ammo before we press against that center. Here I'm running away with these spears because I saw the enemy's peltasts were walking towards me. Thought we might get jabbed to death, but actually they came in for a melee, so that's fine by me. Or is it? The Eastern Spearmen unit is pretty bad, and it says we're losing the fight right off the bat. They actually have lower defense skill than peasants and the same attack as peasants. They do have slightly higher morale, so they'll fight for more than 5 seconds, but they do suck. This general was supposed to be rear attacking the peltasts, but he's got moderately stuck on some buildings on his way around to the back. So a bit of a delay there. And while I was distracted by that, we've got all kinds of issues. Probably with skirmish mode still being on, that's the root of all this. I'm trying to line up our guys on the streets around the enemy square, but some of them have gone right on into the square, as we can see, and we are losing horse archers fast because they just get annihilated if they make contact with anything. While I was sorting out one pile of mess, another pile of mess started at the other corner of the square. I was trying to get those units to stand in the small square just there with some spears in front of them. I need to have skirmish mode off, and I need to pay a lot more attention because even with it off, they'll do wild things all the time. Looks like I'm still trying to get that general in for the rear attack. He might get there eventually. But we are sorting things out as I pull the horse archers out of these melees and push in the spears. In both messy blobs we're facing a general's bodyguard, so the spearmen will get their bonus against cav and be less bad, should be handy. And I've got this free unit of slingers that's going to come into the square and rear attack stuff. So essentially now we're sorting things out. Once all of the cav get out, which is surprisingly difficult with many of them constantly going back in by the looks of things, we'll be able to grind the enemy down with our spears and a few rear attacks, bringing us to this point. It was going very well until the end when we lost hundreds of troops. Pretty nasty. I did expect that to go better than it did, but we're learning a lesson, I suppose. Attacking on multiple fronts with loads of horse archers in tight streets, probably not a good thing to do. Now we want to leave the town as soon as possible. I'm going to have to leave a bunch of stuff behind for public order purposes. So I figured I'll leave all the infantry there and bring the cavalry out to go south into the desert where there is an unwalled settlement we can go after. The other big option would be to go towards Hatra and add to our defences there and try to face down the Seleucid main force. But I figured I'll just do this cheekily, although we can't do it that cheekily because it's going to take a while to get there and get back, so this will incur a moderate delay in the reinforcing of our western territories. I was trying to find where their army was at the moment and we discover it here, standing just to our west, and in fact there's loads of stuff over here. I suspect they've been killing the Pontus forces pretty easily, and I felt very vulnerable at Hatra. We've only got a few units. I could bring down more from the north, but then again I could also be attacked from the north. That's why I kept a small garrison there at Kotes. I thought I'll start moving out with this horse archer unit because it will only take a couple of turns to switch sides. Although, in the next 10 turn sequence we're going to have to reverse that decision. As for my attack on that desert town, as we got there we discover it's actually had walls added to it since our last bit of intel, so I can't attack it with this horse archer stack, and there are no infantry mercenaries available to push a ram for me. This means I need to wait for an infantry unit to catch up, which will massively further delay my attack on that settlement. I'm sending some spears to get started on it, but it's going to be 3 or 4 turns before we can take that place, and then we have to walk back. And a lot can change in that time. In the meantime, I'll be building up more units and spending money on buildings where I can. Some trouble is arising though, because the Scythians are now coming down from the north, and that's what I alluded to earlier. The horse archers I sent off need to come back because we're suddenly in trouble on that front as well. Even with those horse archers, we won't have very much, and I started thinking maybe we should bring up the troops from Hatra. If we brought the other army back, they might arrive in time. But of course there are all kinds of disadvantages to not garrisoning Hatra. We have no idea when the Salukids will notice us here and just send stuff over. There's also more Scythian action back up at the top right hand corner of the map. Another small army is gathering. My defense force here is a bit better than last time, and I'm going to throw in these mercenaries to help out. Having some melee cav could be useful against horse archers, especially inside a settlement when they'll get stuck somewhere. We can send in the melee cav to quickly take them down. Both Scythian forces do go ahead and start their sieges. Inconvenient, but we've got chances to do stuff against both. We can try and relieve the siege in the south, and in the north I'm just going to sit there because I've got quite a lot of confidence they won't be able to actually take the town if we let them attack. Here's some suspicious news though. We see a large army from Egypt standing just on the edge of our border. It's crossed over it and it's facing us. This heavily suggests it has move orders to move towards Seleucia. I'm trying to find the diplomacy screen here. I actually found it pretty fast. That could have gone worse. Here we can check out how they're aligned in the area. They're allied to my ally and allied to my enemy, so hard to say whether they're going to be for or against us, but they're more powerful than us. They've got an army pointing at one of my major settlements. It seems like something bad is going to happen. This is how our war with the Seleucids started as well. I'm going to be building stuff up at Seleucia and not bringing back the other units because they're too committed to this other siege now. Annoyingly here, this infantry unit can't quite join the force and push the ram at the siege, so we have to wait another turn there before we can make the attack. Very excruciating. At Hatra, I started wondering, should I actually go and attack the Seleucids in the west? I can't see where their stacks are. I presumed they've gone up into Pontus's territory to do something. I thought maybe if we're incredibly cheeky in this area, we could swipe another settlement with this small group. So for that purpose I'm going to move out to our border, and we'll have to check out what the situation looks like. In the next turn, if Egypt declares war on us, this area will become even more dangerous, but the way the rivers are set up mean they can't move from south to north into our territory. They'll have to go through Seleucid territory. We've kind of got a choke point going on. Here's my little relief force I've managed to form up to go towards that other Scythian siege. It's not actually very much, but that's the amount we could put together in a very short time frame, and we don't want to wait too long because they might just make their assault. I also thought about getting a peace treaty with the Salukis. I thought they might want to peace out because we've beat them a few times and stolen some of their stuff. They're not even nearly interested. It would be really good for us to peace out of either this war or the Scythian war, especially if an Egyptian war is about to start. In this case, probably not going to happen. I could try and give them loads of money or territory or something, but I wasn't that desperate. We'll come back to that plan if things get real bad. Now moving on, the Scythians do make this attack at Kotes before my relief force arrives. Very inconvenient. However, there is something to note about this battle. They only have 2 infantry units. So if we can take out those infantry units before they make a breach in the walls, all those horse archers might not be able to do too much against us. Therefore, there is something we can try out in Emmanuel Resolve to get away with all this, which I will be trying at the start of the next part.